Okay, it is recording. I am so grateful. Um, I am here with my amazing friend, Ariel Hendelman, Rabbi Ariel Hendelman, who was recently visiting us here in Florida, and we had some amazing conversations that we were like, let's bring this a little bit more into the world, and specifically actually about this word that I think has shaped the world and that people have had a variation of it on their lips millions of times without even knowing the word, which is the word Emunah, which is the word and the name of the academy that Seth and I have created. And that's a really rich, beautiful conversation that we will move into. But we were just reflecting on the phone before we got on here about the kind of magic of time and sometimes the magic of when something needs to be rescheduled, when something needs to be pushed back or adjusted, and realizing that it's actually the perfect time. And that happened with this conversation. And we find ourselves together on a very cool, very magical, very fun day in the Hebrew calendar, Tu B'Av, and feels very wonderful to just be like, women together celebrating and being ourselves, which is a big part of this beautiful day. So I just want to welcome you, Ariel, to introduce us to this moment in time in the spiral medicine of the Hebrew calendar.
Yeah, I love that you said spiral medicine. It really feels like that. So before I say anything about Tu B'Av, I want to just say a little bit about what came before today in the month of Av. We have this time of like really intense mourning and grief, and that it's sort of scheduled in the Hebrew calendar. Like this is our designated time for mourning and grief, for historical structures that were desecrated and torn down, temples, that couldn't withstand corruption and war, and that goes right up until the 9th of this month, so last week. And then we have these days in between where like we've been in this intense mourning and grief, and our tradition is telling us not only is that okay, it's actually holy to mark time for sorrow and to welcome that. And then we have today and last night, this full moon, where that energy really turns. And we're told that in the biblical times, the women would exchange white clothes so that no one would know who was wealthy and who was not wealthy. And they would go out into the vineyards and they would dance in order to attract their beloved. And I can't think of another month in our calendar that has such a stark, um, really reminder of the bittersweetness of what it is to be alive, and that these things are not separate. That yes, now we are dancing, but we are dancing and maybe we're still grieving. Or maybe while we're grieving, we're dancing. It's like these things are intertwined. And it feels like a powerful day to bring that energy in. And how might that relate to Emunah?
Yeah. Mm, so beautiful. So, yes, and why don't you tell us what Emunah is from your wisdom and the way that you are holding it?
Mm. Well, I don't want to use the word faith because I know that you hate that word.
Well, I think I don't hate it.
Okay.
Very, very I'm a little allergic to it,
Hmm.
and I think it's a helpful reference point, um, because I think you can't talk about Emunah in the English language in this culture, in like this, especially like Christian hegemonic kind of empire culture, without the reference point of faith, and maybe like shit talking faith a little bit. Is how I am, but please, you go ahead.
Yeah. So it's interesting because knowing your aversion to that word, um, what I would like to do is talk about it in a way that we don't even need to use that word. Like, what is emunah outside of the faith definition or outside of the
Great.
faith paradigm?
Awesome.
And in my in my experience, what's coming to me now is it's really to be in process with whatever we call God. Like, it
Mm.
is the act of being in relationship with the one creator, source, whatever language you want to use. It's really it's like the art of being in relationship with something larger than ourselves, with mystery. And to know that ever increasing intimacy with mystery does not render that mystery any less mysterious. And so I think we have to sprinkle elements like trust, like patience, like humility, like courage in there.
Yeah.
Those feel really necessary to be in that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that when people use the word faith, so much of that is part of what that often means for them personally.
Mhm.
And every word that you just brought forward to me holds so much more richness and so much more power, um, and and is very much how we talk about it and teach it, as well as very much about relationship, and and a very deeply trusting relationship. Um, and it's not necessarily trust. It's not trusting that trusting that God or the divine or whatever it is that you are, however you frame what you are in relationship with, uh, is going to magically take care of everything, or, always, be like this like cosmic referee for fairness, or, whatever that may be, as much as we
Wow.
may long for that. Right. Um, but trusting in the nature of it,
Mm, mm.
like trusting in the nature of the divine. Um, and how any one of us characterizes the nature of the divine is going to be different depending on our relationship.
Yeah.
And the reason that there are many reasons why this ended up becoming the name of our academy. Um but a big factor of it was that in Seth's work, working with like Olympians and professional athletes and Fortune 100 CEOs and like really amazing people, and also like ordinary people. He found so consistently that it was people who had some kind of a connection, some kind of a relationship with something greater than them, whether they defined that in religious terms or in more spiritual or even philosophical kind of terms, that they always got the best results, whether that those results were, in the physical dimension or, in all these other dimensions of life that we can work on. And um and to really center that as like if we're trying to learn, and I've been recently characterizing what we do in Emunah, and my specific role as being really focused on the psycho-spiritual development process, and the psycho-spiritual developmental work that we need to do as individuals and as a collective for the times that we're living in. And when we place ourselves in the center of the universe, like so many people do in their psychological and or spiritual, developmental work, in their personal development work, there's a lot of narcissistic pitfalls that can come from that. There's, whether, or if you want to call it narcissism or ego or whatever you call it, depending on your framing that you're coming from. um, it's very easy to do that. It's easy to do that as also like the founder of a thing, and a spiritual teacher. Like you are a rabbi and a spiritual leader of a community. We are the founders of this online community, and we teach in person as well. And it's like very, very important to be aware of like when you are the center of the thing instead of the whole being the center of the thing. And it's like to not mistake the finger for the moon kind of a thing. And so to emphasize and to center for us that what we're here about, it's not the Seth and Ganga Academy, it's the Emunah Academy. And that is a Hebrew word, that is like a point of connection and deep spiritual orientation for us. But recognizing as interspiritual ministers, our background, is in training to meet people in every kind of religious and spiritual orientation, as well as none. That can look like lots of different things, but that the point is the quality of the relationship, and the point is like the depth and the quality of connection that's there, and every single person recognizing that they actually are responsible for that relationship, that it can be cultivated in community and it can be cultivated with guidance from others, but it can't be mediated.
Mm.
It must be lived with oneself all the way through. And I think that in every religious tradition and in so many other spaces where that can turn into cults, like people are, trained and uh, conditioned to believe that it cannot be them, the relationship, that it
Right.
has to be someone with greater authority than them. And it's, I think, nice, to hear like from a rabbi or a minister or a whatever, to be like, no, actually, it it's all like it is alive, and the potential for that relationship is so alive within each and every single one of us.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on something really important because there's gatekeeping everywhere, and that emunah, in a sense, relates to this like opening of the gate, and that actually it's not just a sense of a privilege to have that gate be open, and oh, I can actually take responsibility for my relationship with the one, with life itself, but actually it's my responsibility, as you said. And I think it's Rav Kook, I don't remember. Someone wise said that basically all of our issues stem from a wrong conception of relationship with Creator. And I think it's like we have to, just as we grow up, as we age, like we have to mature spiritually and we get stuck in certain pitfalls, usually having to do with our conception of God.
Yeah.
It's like God as parent, or God as like teacher who yelled at me after math class,
Yeah.
or God as guru. And then there's this sense of like opening and shedding and letting go. And what when we go through that process remains, is often like beyond definition, which then makes it really hard to talk about.
Mm.
And as spiritual leaders, I think the best thing we can do, one of the best things we can do, is like hold those questions with people and not try actually to say, "Oh wait, let's put a new definition on this," because sometimes that can be detrimental when actually holding the question it is really what's needed.
Yeah, totally. Well, and also like validating the ineffable nature of the thing. And that's,
Yeah.
I think, where but it was William James's like qualities of mystical experience. Those core defined qualities, is, I think, very, very helpful, because whether people access it through psychedelics or through a religious service or through their dream life or through, a mystical experience in nature, or, just name it, every kind of possible thing, to actually have a framework of these qualities of religious experience, um, is really, really helpful. And I'm actually want to pull them up because I want to make sure I'm getting them correctly. Do you know them off the top of your head? I know ineffability
No.
is them. It's transient. This is something that we studied. I had to write, yeah, multiple papers on this in college, so I always assume it's one of those things like this and the Clifford Geertz's working definition of religion. I assume that
Mhm.
people everyone knows these
Yeah.
things. I don't No, that's like a very niche thing because I studied religious anthropology. Like this is
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
the
I don't think we studied this in rabbinic school.
yeah. So,
We should have.
yeah, yeah, I think it's very, very useful, especially for anyone providing spiritual guidance for other people to be able to affirm the mystical experiences of the people that we are working with. Um, so it's the qualities are ineffable. So, and for anyone who may not be familiar with the word ineffable, it means that language cannot capture it, that that language cannot do justice to it. And if you've ever had a psychedelic experience, especially, and then you try to talk to someone who hasn't had a psychedelic experience, especially, you're just like you recognize that like it's impossible. When you do speak with someone who has experience with psychedelics from that place, you can meet each other in a mutual recognition of the ineffable quality of it, which is really nice.
You have a
Um,
shared vocabulary in a sense.
yeah, but and also like a shared ability to be in the quiet mystery of
Mm.
not having the vocabulary for it as well.
Mm. Mhm.
I think that that's a key part of then finding the vocabulary that you can have to bridge
Yeah.
those experiences.
So in
Then the
Hebrew, I
second,
think we would call
Mhm,
ineffability Ein Sof, right? I think that's what we're talking about, like that without end. But like
mhm.
Kabbalistically, that name of the divine was really meant to signify all that we cannot possibly say or fathom. Like really the true ineffability of this entity, this life force that we are trying to gesture towards and speak about.
Totally, and I think that that's also gestured toward with, just referring to God as Hashem, as
Mm,
just the
mhm,
name. It's just like it's not we're not saying the name, we're just saying the name. As well as Yod He Vav He, the Tetragrammaton, it's just like all these different names for the divine that are gesturing toward the ungraspability of all that is.
yeah.
So then the second quality is a noetic quality, so that it confers gnosis of some kind, that there is something
Mm,
that has been learned and gathered that is of a wisdom quality, that it's a state of deep insight, truth, or direct knowledge that goes beyond normal logic.
mm,
Um, Curious
mhm.
what you would reflect on with that.
Wow, I love that. I mean, I'm thinking of just to go back to the Kabbalistic tree of life, I'm thinking of chokhmah, which we translate as wisdom, um, which can be taken in many different ways. But like in the book of Proverbs, chokhmah becomes this amazing female character, this archetype of really the wisdom that is coming through the divine feminine specifically,
Cool.
that is sort of bestowing that mystical, resonant wisdom stream. So that's what I'm thinking of, when you say gnosis, that's what comes to mind.
I love that. I'd be curious to let's follow up. I'd be curious to learn more about that,
Yeah.
including the time frame of that, because I've done some study in the past around um the the archetype in like the Greek world of Sophia as
Mhm,
like the
mhm.
goddess of wisdom. And if I'm not mistaken, I may be misremembering this, but I remember having some incredible realizations around the timing of the Sophia archetype kind of emerging in consciousness, at the same time as in India, um, both in the Buddhist world, Prajnaparamita as the mother of all Buddhas, and this like incredible symbol of of immense wisdom, emerging, uh, and also in Hindu math world, the emergence of the number zero
Hmm,
and like the invention of zero, which is a really big deal.
yeah, yeah.
And did not exist in math before a certain moment in history. And I've always kind of associated also Ein Sof
Mhm,
with Sophia and with zero and also with Prajnaparamita as these like archetypal energies. And I'd be curious to explore time cycles of when these ideas and maybe they existed as like seeds, in small places, but then it's like, when was
Yeah,
time
what
right?
was the blossoming?
Yeah, to bloom. Exactly. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting because, these things travel, and I
yeah.
feel like when there's an idea or truth whose time has come, that
Hmm.
that blossoming spreads far and wide.
Yeah. And also sometimes they get lost. Like Prajnaparamita was known for a very long time and then was lost to history for like a couple hundred years, if I'm not mistaken, except in Java, on the island of Java, like where Buddhism and Hinduism had spread, and there was um like a really amazing man who took this crazy journey to reclaim and reintroduce Prajnaparamita back into the Buddhist world. And it's like this amazing story that I learned about when I was studying with Buddha in India. Um, and it was and so there's also with a lot of these things, and I think especially in the times that we're living in, there's a lot of forgetting, and then there's the remembering and the reclamation, and that is a big part of the noetic quality as well, is like sometimes there's just a deep knowing and a remembering of something that it's time for now. And you might not be able to track the logical, linear, chain of custody of that knowledge
Mm,
because it came to you through a mystical experience. Um, and it brings us to the third quality, which is transiency.
mm, mhm,
That that peak state is usually very brief,
mhm.
sometimes only a few minutes that you're able to access this state. But the impact and the ripples emotionally and mentally and in all the dimensions of our lives continue long after.
I love that, and I think it's super important. I'm thinking of a phrase that comes up in Sefer Yetzirah, which is our oldest known Jewish mystical text. It might not actually be our oldest, but it's our oldest known. And there's this rhythm that is recorded as running and returning, Ratzov Veshov, and this sense of, I think of the moon and the tides. Like there's this sense of we touch into the mystical experience, or we touch into some sort of mystical unity consciousness. We touch into the non-dual. We're actually not meant to stay there. We can't really stay there. And then there's that sense of going back, separation, which creates longing, which creates desire. And then that surges us forward again into the next uh, mystical state, contact, connection with unity consciousness that we'll have. And then again, there will be separation. It's like I think sometimes as seekers on this spiritual path, I know that I've had this too after deep experiences or peak experiences. Like I feel like something's wrong when I'm kind of coming back to my everyday consciousness. Like, oh, I've done something wrong. I haven't been able to hold on to it. But like we can't
Yeah.
hold on to it. And so I think that's super important to just be like, oh, this is actually the rhythm of life. And it's a sacred rhythm, even like the rhythm of making love, like stepping back, coming together, stepping like this is how life creates itself anew through us.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much that I could say about that from the framing of entropy and syntropy, but
Mm,
I'd rather actually just come back to this emphasis of what you just said, of just like it's the nature of relationship. And that, just bringing us back to Emunah as like this quality of relationship and of how we are in our relationship with the divine, arriving and sometimes feeling far away. And if you read like the poetry of so many of the great mystics throughout history, um, there is so much of that. There is so much, it's like the best poetry comes from those moments where you feel far away from the beloved and you are longing for return. Um, and I even actually just read a poem the other day that was, I don't think about God. I think it was about, a romance love relationship. But it was this beautiful, just a few lines about how I haven't written in my journal for quite some time, like, because and no one would believe me, and there is no record of just, like, how happy I am.
Mm.
It was a very beautiful poem. I'm not doing anything close to justice to it, but, I I definitely feel that in my own life is, like, when things are going really well, I'm fully just present and in it. And then when there is the pain and the longing and the, um feeling separate and far away from something, that's actually when I create, because I'm like moving myself forward to meet
Mm.
it again. And that feels very important, um, to embrace in this world, and not to stigmatize it or to have the desire that we're always, in one static state, but that we actually embrace, like, "Oh, this is that season. I'm in a
Right.
moment of that." And that's actually was a huge breakthrough that happened to me the day that I met Seth, the day that I met who would become my husband. Um, was I had this deep experience of grief and pain, and I had this like moment of this message that was like very clear. It was, you have to empty before you can fill up.
Mm. Mm.
And so I allowed myself to feel and release, like, the emotional intensity, like, to actually allow myself it to move through me instead of resisting it or holding it at a distance. I was like, "Oh, I need to feel everything that I'm resisting feeling right now in order to empty out of that completely. I need to cry. I need to be held. I need to be, have this intense release." And then I know that there's magic on the other side of it, and it was literally Seth Kaufman on the other side of the door.
Wow.
Pretty amazing. So that lesson has really stuck with me, and
Wow.
often I feel, intense, like, anxiety or intense, like, depressive waves kind of coming over me. They don't last as long as they have in the past,
Mm.
because
Mhm.
I kind of give myself over to them. I create a space that feels safe enough for me to fully surrender to being moved by the sensation and the experience that is, like, knocking at the door of my being. And then it's like they're able to do their job faster because
Right,
I'm
'cause you're not bracing.
not bracing, I'm not resisting it so much. Um,
Yeah. Oh,
and so
it's so important. It's so
Yeah,
important
and
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 hard
allowing
to
those
do.
moments to actually, like, be like, "Oh, let me make this into a mystical experience. Let me embrace that it is actually gonna be transient. It won't
Yes.
last forever,
Yes.
so let me give myself over to it completely so that it moves through in exactly the
Well,
right
and
amount."
that's the thing, I think a lot of us have in the back of our minds, somewhere in the back burner when we're in a really uncomfortable feeling, there's this fear that like, "Oh, actually this isn't gonna end."
Yeah.
Even though we can draw a line to all the times when we have experienced something similar and it has ended, there is that feeling, and of course, feelings don't need to be rational, that, "Oh, this is just gonna like, it's gonna consume me, and then this is gonna be all that there is." So this transience point is it's so important, it's so vital because it's like, no, actually change is happening all the time, right? What's the Octavia Butler quote? God is change.
God has changed,
Like
and
that's like all
everything
that there is.
and that everything you touch, you change, and
Mm.
everything you change changes you.
Yes.
That's my
Yes.
favorite part of that.
Yes.
Yeah, of the parables, yeah. Yeah, everything you touch, you change, and everything you change changes you. Um, it's very humbling, uh, when we think that we know what change needs to happen outside of ourselves,
Yeah.
and to have that phrase with us of just like, "Oh, cool, yeah. Everything I touch, I change." Like, if I engage with this thing, I will be changing it,
Mhm.
whether I know what's right for it or not. But what I can, and I can't necessarily control the change that I do affect in others, but what I can be aware of is how that thing is changing me in return and what I can do with that. And that is some high agency shit right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's making me think of, like, before I lead a prayer service, to think about that quote and that truth is like people are going to be changed by this experience. I don't know if it's going to be for good. I hope it's going to be
Yeah.
for good, but I don't know. And I'm going to be changed.
Yeah.
All of us are. And maybe the best we can do is, put aside whether or not, like, it's really not our business. Think whether what we offer is like good. What does that even mean? What's our business is it true? Is it true?
Mm,
And oftentimes I think to bring it back to Emunah, it's like the truth comes from that friction of like whatever it is we're dealing with that maybe we don't need to talk about straight on, but like to bring that rather than, oh, I'm going to leave that aside because now I have to lead a thing. It's like, no, no, bring your whole self to this thing that you're leading because then it will be true. It will just come naturally.
mm,
I remember a teacher saying to me once, the founder of my school, Rabbi Marsha Prager, is just an incredible space holder and rabbi and leader. She said, the best you can do is ask your soul, what do you need today?
mhm.
And then stand up in prayer and offer that. Because if it's really what your soul needs, those souls who are drawn to you are going to need that same exact thing.
I love that. I love that. And I think that the specificity of the soul is helpful. I'm just thinking right now we have a student who uh was a former student of um this like couple that I guess sounds like it got very, very messy and very unhealthy, and looking back, he's realizing, like, things that were maybe red flags all the way along, but definitely major red flags right now. I shared a little bit about this with you when you were here, and, one of the points of critique that I've seen from some of, this couple's former students was, um, that it felt like they were often teaching from a place of what the lessons that they were, like, working through in their relationship in that moment, and presenting what they were processing as, like, ultimate truth,
Yeah.
um, while they were still in the messy middle of the process of it, and that as students who trust them, that at the time it was like, you kind of take people's word as gospel, and then it's like after the fact you realize like, "Oh, maybe I need to bring some criticality to this," or,
Mhm.
whatever it may be. So I'm actually so I tend to be, I'm curious about and sensitive to the line that can be there, uh, as people hold power in spiritual settings, and teaching settings around, um how can we and it's like, just a question that I kind of, am perpetually holding is like, how can we be sure that we're striking that right balance of like of really speaking from and sharing from what is authentic and alive and true in the moment, and from a place of like humility and like and the right level of self-awareness of like what we're in, and offering it as like facilitating and guiding people from a place of, and again, this is just coming back to like, are you at the center, or is the relationship with the divine at the
Right,
center
right,
for
right,
you and for everyone?
right.
And
You want to offer the wisdom, not the wound.
yeah, yes, totally, totally. And that's something that, I see happening all the time, where it's just like, oh wow, yeah, like that person's entire career happened from them sharing from the wound, and
Mm,
it's
mhm. Yeah, and that unfortunately is not gonna help anyone.
no, well, and but people get it, it's like you can't look away from a impending train crash,
Right,
like, and then some people, like, get dopamine hits from that, and they
mhm,
think that that's helping them, and that there's, like, maybe, like, nuggets of wisdom or something like that that might come through. It's a nuanced world, it's a nuanced space to be in this kind of work,
totally,
and it's
totally.
nice, and I mean, I think that these are the kinds of conversations that do happen a lot, like privately. It's fun to share this, in this space as well.
Yeah.
I will share the fourth quality of mystical experience from William James.
Yeah,
It
please.
is passivity, that it
Mm,
feels, and that I think what he really meant there, if I recall from my studies, is that it's not something that you are controlling,
mm, yeah.
that something that you feel that you are receiving from something greater than yourself.
I have to grab my cord. Give me one moment. I'm realizing my computer's gonna die.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm curious if is passivity the same thing as receptivity?
That's when I was looking at that just a few minutes ago, I was like, "Huh, yeah, I would maybe use the word receptivity as well."
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and I'd like to go back to like the original text and kind of explore that a little bit, because I agree, and I'm curious. I'd love to hear more of what comes to mind for you with the distinction between those two.
Yeah, so passivity sounds quite passive. So, go figure. But receptivity to me is really I mean that is really like the integral piece in my understanding and experience of the mystical path. In fact, I was just talking about this with some students who I was teaching intro to Jewish mysticism last week. This large group, and we ended up really coming back to this point, probably more than any other, of like, well, if Kabbalah, if our Hebrew word for the mystical experience and the mystical tradition, actually means received, and it's this sense of something being passed down, but if we can't receive it, then we're not on the path, right? We've somehow fallen off. And so then the question becomes, well, what is it to be in a posture of receiving? And that might be the same for everybody, and there's also going to be differences for everyone too. But I think, something you said in the beginning is like humility and also remembering that we actually don't know everything. If we know everything, I have no need to receive anything. I'm full already and I'm good. And so what are these processes, also coming back to this time in the Hebrew calendar of Av, if I can pour out my heart like water, which is what the book of Lamentations asks us to do on the 9th of Av, then I can actually be ready to go out into the vineyard and to dance and to be full of the truth of my own belovedness,
Yeah,
and to receive whatever I might receive out there in that mystical vineyard. But if I'm already full, uh, my dancing is going to look quite differently.
totally. Totally, I love that. I love that just coming full circle. I will also say that that is how I experience the, the Yom Kippur Sukkot arc,
Mm,
and just like the whole days of awe, from Rosh Hashanah all the way through Sukkot, and that it's like Sukkot. I love that it's like you have your meals outside, and you welcome your ancestors, and you welcome strangers, and you welcome food into your body. After this time of fasting and seriousness and atonement and everything. It's like it really is this, it's like we're giving you very clear instructions about how you fill yourself up now.
mm, mm.
And I feel like
While sitting in a sukkah that's like totally exposed to all the elements and this sense of,
yeah,
yeah, that's so
yeah. Well, and also like exposed to like the spirits like of, and like literally inviting, like inviting strangers and inviting ancestors. Like it's like it's like social and spiritual and ecological relationship r- regeneration,
mm,
during that time. It's so powerful. And of course, I think I feel like Av is like definitely like the beginning of the preparations for that time, and so
yeah,
it's cool to feel into the kind of like temporal, like the spiritual technology of these, because the contrast in Av is like the starkest contrast, from like the deepest grief and the deepest feeling to like, it's often referred to as like Jewish Valentine's Day, it's like
Right.
the most romantic, exuberant, wine focused, like,
Mhm.
um, beautiful, beautiful day. And it's so good to be with you on this day. I
Yeah.
do have to jump into a client call, and I love you, and I'm so grateful for this time together.
Same. Love you too. And what a beautiful conversation. And yeah, beautiful to be with you and to talk about these things that matter and hold these questions that matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And experiment with Substack Studio. So
Yeah.
we are learning and excited to be learning. And I think it's nice in this moment where so much on Substack is about um, the degree to which we're trying to be human or not human.
Right. Right.
It's nice to do something that's really easy to do as just, like, human to human, and to
Yes.
share with
Yes.
people, and so I look forward to hearing any thoughts that this sparked from any of you humans who might be listening to this after the fact,
Yes,
and
please. Yeah.
I'll love you as well. Bye.